Hello friends, we are here today in the second chapter of the book of Revelation. So in the last chapter, Jesus revealed himself to John. He doesn't look like he did in his earthly life. He looks amazing. The last thing that he says, I want you to write down a message that I have for the 7 churches in Asia Minor. And I think it's important, it's not supposed to be talking to every church in the world at the time. However, the messages that are to the churches could be messages to any church today. They're messages that could apply to anybody at any time. Beware of this, but they were specific things that the churches in Asia Minor were doing wrong or things that were going bad about them. And so he has these 7 messages, and today in chapter 2, we're going to go through 4 of them. Now the messages all have the same structure. When they start, it addresses Jesus. It says, from this message from Jesus. But when it talks about Jesus, it talks about a different aspect of the vision that John gave in chapter 1. It always starts off with one of those references. And then it pronounces kind of a blessing and a curse in each one. And it basically says something that they're doing right and something they're doing wrong, and what he's going to do to the people that are doing wrong things and what he's going to do to the people that are doing right things. And at the end of all of these, he says, to those who conquer. I think that's such an interesting way of putting what he's trying to say here. And what he is trying to say here is, to those who conquer are not people that are taking over land, or to those who conquer aren't those who winning a great battle. Those who conquer are those who finish to the end. The ones that keep their relationship with God, that end up loving God through their whole lives and through all the tribulation that earth has to offer us. We stick to God. Those are the people that conquer. So, the first one he says is to the church in Ephesus. Now the church in Ephesus, they have one good thing going for them, and it's that they can identify false teachers. When they see a false teacher, they say, that's unbiblical. That doesn't go along with what God has told us. And in particular, he's talking about the Nicolaitans. Now we don't know really anything about the Nicolaitans. We just know that it was a heresy that was going on at the time. And God, it says in this section here, that God hates what the Nicolaitans are teaching. And he's saying, you guys did this right. That to the church in Ephesus, good job finding the false teachers and knowing what the truth is. And he said, but I have this against you, that you have lost your first love. He's saying the love that we had in the beginning with you in the church of Ephesus, we've lost it. And he's saying, if you get it back, if you love me like you did in the beginning, you will be able to eat from the tree of life. Now that's the goal, really. A lot of what it means to be with God, to go to heaven, is really just being able to eat from the tree of life, where we can live forever and we can be with God continually. That's what happened in the beginning in the garden. God cut off Adam and Eve. They put them east of Eden, and he made it so that they can't go back, so they can't eat from the tree of life, lest they live in this fallen state forever. And so he, from the beginning, has said, I'm making it so that you guys can come back to the tree of life. So that's what he's saying to the church in Ephesus. But it's true of all the churches that he's talking to, and it's true of us today. So I think that's important. When Jesus is talking to the church in Ephesus, he references himself as the one who stands among the lampstands and the one that has the 7 stars in his hands. And he's addressing all of this to the angel in Ephesus. Now this could mean messenger. We don't exactly know if it's talking to an angel or if it's talking to a person, but that's what it says. So to the second one, it's talking to the church in Smyrna. Now, Smyrna, he uses a different reference from chapter 1. To Smyrna, it says, and the way it addresses Jesus is the one who is from the first to the last. You know, the one who died and was risen. Now to the church in Smyrna, it says, I know you have tribulations. I know you're poor. I know that you were in poverty. And he's like, but I want you to know that you are rich. And he's saying, you know, because of this poverty that you're enduring, because of the tribulation that you're going through, you know, your relationship with me is growing stronger. He's really kind of just saying a blessing. You know, I know what you're going through. And he's saying, you guys are going to go through even more. You know, there's going to be 10 days that you're going to go through tribulation. But to those who conquer, to those who stay fast to God, he says, I give you the crown of life. So the next church he talks to is the church in Pergamum. Now Pergamum is also a little different. It sounds like a horrible place. He calls it the throne of Satan. You know, that he's saying, you know, to the church in Pergamum, you guys are in a bad place, a very unholy place. And you've been able to keep your faith, even though you're in such an unholy place. Now, what he says to the church there in Pergamum, he's like, though you've been able to keep your faith, you've gone the way of Balaam, it says. Now, by that, you know, it's referencing the Old Testament story of Balaam, where a man named Balak tried to have him curse God's people, you know, the Israelites. And in the end, he didn't do it, but what he did do was he went in and he made the Israelites curse themselves. By that, he had the people of the city that they were going into kind of intermarry with the other people. And in that, they fell into sin. They fell into different cultures, and they lost their identity with God. And so because of that, they cursed themselves. And he's saying, this is the way of Balaam. This is the way that you're going. You guys are at the throne of Satan, and you're going to go the way of Satan. He says something really interesting here. He says, but to those who conquer, I will give you new manna. I think that's kind of neat. We don't exactly know what manna is. You know, some people called it like the bread from God. You know, this is written in the book of Numbers. But we don't know what it is. In fact, the word manna means, what is this? But we know that it's provision from God. It's food straight from God. And he's saying, I'm going to give you the new manna. You know, manna was a representation of Jesus. You know, throughout scriptures, they use manna to symbolize Jesus to us. But it says something else. It says, I'm going to give you a white stone, and I'm going to put your name on it. And it's not going to be an earthly name either. He's going to give you a new name. He's going to give you a white stone and a new name. And this name, nobody else will know. Now, like all these other blessings, these are things that God is going to do for us. You know, these are the things that we have to look forward to as Christians. So lastly, we have to the letter of Thyatira. And the imagery that they took from chapter 1 and this one is, you know, addressing Jesus. Jesus is the one with eyes like fire, and the one with feet like bronze. And God has nice things to say. I mean, Jesus has nice things to say about the church in Thyatira. It says that they are loving and they are patient. You know, they're patiently awaiting God's return. They're patiently awaiting their reward. And he says, but I have this against you, that you have kind of gone the way of Jezebel. And you might think, who's Jezebel? You know, this is another Old Testament reference like Balaam. She was the wife of the king, King Ahab. And She was a horrible woman. So what Jezebel symbolizes is really sexual impurity, but also, Baal worship. The name Jezebel has to do with Baal worship. She comes from the people of Baal, and she was by far the worst queen, and made Ahab the worst king that they ever had. But he says, to the ones that conquer. He actually says it interesting in this one. He says, to the ones who do not hold to the deep things of Satan. To those people, he said, you guys are going to rule the nations. You can rule it with a rod of iron. In the world to come, we will rule. I mean, God is the ruler of all, but we will be judges. So we've got 5 more churches to talk about, and that will be tomorrow. But for now, that was Revelation chapter 2. Have a great day. Bye.